And by the way, of course, you can suspect that my interest for these issues as a sort of autobiographical background. I've discovered that my mother, who was in Auschwitz and was working as a chemist in the chemistry lab, was using for experiments plants which had been grown in a greenhouse designed by Circus. If we leave aside the biographical trajectories, also if several of them will be monitored here today, there are of course many figures that condense the exceedingly complex relationship of architecture and war. These relationships develop within a new geography, as for the first time, hence the title of the lecture, the rear of the belligerent countries is hit by in-depth bombing, dissolving the age-old differentiation between front and rear. The first issue to be discussed is simply the elementary wartime experience of architects thrown under the uniform or as simple civilians in the whirlwind of combats, bombings, and subject to starvation and exile, an experience that changed them forever. In the sphere of design, the war enlarged the scale of projects and buildings, with the emergence of mega projects such as the Pentagon, in the making of which architects were engaged, or huge productive territories in the German Empire. The material dimension of an industrialist war can also be perceived in the experimental use of new technologies, such as laminated wood using new types of glues, light metals and plastics, all of which will be later adapted for peaceful purposes. Also, wartime scarcity led to a sort of proto-ecological sensitivity to economy and recycling. Here, this amazing concept for wood springs for mattresses developed by Moholy-Nagy in Chicago. The war also involved unprecedented planning efforts, and new methodologies were developed, such as operational research, which required the use of elaborate representations. The use of visual devices for war situation rooms, here one designed by Henry Dreyfus in the US, required the contribution of architects and designers, while the construction of a national consensus in the belligerent nations led to campaigns of information using all medias, from posters to film. Architectural expertise was also mobilized in the creation of camouflage schemes, sometimes extended to the dimensions of a city or a territory. What we see here is an amazing project for luring the Allied bombers away from the center of Hamburg by visually hiding the Innenalster, here, the interior Alster, and moving it to the south, to this other area, by creating a fake network of streets. Whereas World War II had seen essentially painters working in the domain of camouflage, this time a different type of competence was used, much more based on scientific theories of perception. With the extended theaters of operation, the notion of deployment took new dimensions. Mobile, prefabricated devices such as the Bailey bridges, here, the Bailey bridges on the left were used on all the Allied fronts, and the Mulberry floating harbor on the right, built off the Normandy coast, has been one of the conditions of the landing successes there. Architecture also encountered, finally, in many ways, questions of identity and memory, from the projects participating to strategies of conquest, occupation, and annexation, to the numerous designs aiming at commemorating victory or at mourning victims. Here, the amazing parallel between a memorial plan by Wilhelm Kreis for the victory over the Soviet Union, and happily enough never built, and the other one designed at the same moment by Zakharov, a Soviet architect, for celebrating the victory in Stalingrad. Amazing. And of course, behind all these projects, we find, of course, the spirit of Boulet and other architects. On the base of 19 papers proposed and retained among some 70 that were submitted, 4 clusters have been shaped in order to allow for a fruitful discussion during these 2 days, focused on a wide range of national situations, from the US to Japan, passing through Great Britain, France, Italy, Belgium, Germany, Finland, Greece, Czechoslovakia, Poland, and the Soviet Union. So the discussion today will be also worldwide discussion. The first cluster deals with infrastructure of various types, which participated to the preparation of war at the level of territorial devices or of building technologies, and to its administration. The recording of the destruction of the same infrastructures is also part of wartime activities in which planners were engaged and will be discussed. The second group of papers deals with specific technologies, and in particular with new questions raised since the early 1930s by the aerial menace. Architects were engaged in the designs of bunkers and of camouflage schemes, sometimes of delirious proportions like the ones we saw. These programs were only one part of broader sets of actions related with the technological side of the war and with the economy at large. A third group of problems to be discussed deals with architectural endeavors related to the occupation of conquered territories, in which strategies of colonization but also of monumental marking took place. State policies contrast with astonishing resistance schemes such as the one in Warsaw, which will be presented by Anna. Here we see the crazy projects by the Lukács brothers for the university city in Bratislava, which was submitted to a competition won by an Italian team, a rare example of international competition organized within the Nazi system of power. Finally, the fourth panel focuses on wartime strategies for post-war reconstruction, both at the scale of the domestic environment and at the scale of national territories. Besides the challenge of reconstruction after an unprecedented wave of destruction, the war appeared in many cases, as we see here with this British caricature, as an opportunity for the reshaping of cities and territorial structures of entire nations. Of course, many issues have been left and will be left out from an already very densely packed weekend, but these 2 days should allow for an intense confrontation of viewpoints, contributing, I hope, to confirming the historical centrality of the episodes considered. Thank you.